cold Sunday morning, having traveled up from Bend, Oregon in snowy conditions, we arrive at the Columbia River in Biggs Junction, where the temperature, though still cold, was a bit more bearable. Our first train is seen passing the old grain elevators in Biggs. Bound for the ports in Portland, Oregon, this train originated in Canada, explaining the Canadian power and the hopper cars mixed in the train itself. After the westbound grain train had cleared the area, the signals were still on and indicating an eastbound. This train turned out to be an empty ethanol train. These trains are quite a common sight through this area and can be seen coming down from Canada through Idaho on the Spokane International Line, through the Columbia River Gorge, down the Willamette Valley, through Pengra Pass, down the I-5 corridor all the way to Bakersfield, California. Once they arrive in Bakersfield, the trains are then unloaded to continue with the refinery process. It is very common for the power to be a mixture of Canadian Pacific and Union Pacific locomotives, and sometimes you will get BNSF locomotives on these trains. A little further west, where the Deschutes River joins the Columbia, we waited for an oncoming westbound train, which turned out to be a very long manifest, also bound for Portland, but for the Albina Yard, based near the center of the city. The Columbia's large width, sharp bends coupled with many vantage points creates a plentiful selection of locations to view both east and westbound trains. Just outside the Dalles, we find another manifest train, and eastbound this time, which had stopped to pick up some cars on its way to Hinkle Yard in eastern Oregon. Having completed its work, we catch the crew powering its train up the steep grade with all the effort that they can muster. The 3 GEs on the front of the train are working hard, but the 4 E&Ds are just dead in tow, no doubt part of a power move from Portland to Hinkle Yard. A lot of the cars in this train actually originate from Eugene, and from there, from the Central Oregon line, as well as the PNW and the Coos Bay Rail Link. As can be seen on some of the lumber cars particularly, it's usually an easy way to find out where a lot of carloads come from since they have the company names written on the side. This monster of a train took about 10 minutes to go past fully, so it was edited a little bit just to make things slightly quicker. We now crossed the river to Dowsport on the Washington side. We located ourselves at a crossing which had no name, and the signals were already on, set for a westbound. This train turned out to be a short local with 2 BNSF Jeep locomotives, no doubt heading west back towards Vancouver Yard. Now a little further west along the river, we were at the Chamberlain Lake rest stop area next to Highway 14. Here you get a great view of the dike that creates Chamberlain Lake, which used to be part of the Columbia River but was cut off when the dike was built through by the railroad. Here we see a BNSF train making its way out onto the dike. Just to the west of Lowell, Washington is the Chamberlain Lake rest stop area on Highway 14. From here there's a great vantage point of trains crossing the dike that separates the aforementioned Chamberlain Lake from the Columbia River. Here we see one of BNSF's grain trains about to cross the dike on its way towards Vancouver, Washington. Looking down from the same viewpoint, we get a great bird's eye view of the same train passing through a series of tunnels that lie beneath. It's easy to see why these trains are known as earthworms, with their brown hoppers working from one tunnel to another, crawling through the landscape as it were. Now, as the day was drawing to a close and the light was starting to hide behind the mountains, we found ourselves in the very small hamlet of Hood, across the river from Hood River in Oregon. And here we had a nice surprise of a westbound Autorec train being hauled by a Norfolk Southern and a Kansas City Southern locomotive, both units far from home as they're heading west. I do hope that you have enjoyed this video. Feel free to give it a like and do subscribe for future content by Sidetrack.